Welcome everybody, and we are back. Burner and Barthy are here again to unplug another season of Central Coast Rugby. With well over 21,000 downloads already, prepare your ears for all the latest news, views and shit takes surrounding the sport and the community that ties us all together. Good chat, good footy, good fun. Take it away, boys.
Thanks, Tomo. Awesome intro as always. Barthy, exciting episode today, mate. Absolutely pumped. Yeah. Tell us about it. What's happening? Exciting times. I've got to get into it.
Big news. As you would have seen through our social media posts from the Central Coast and certainly from ours, big news about Charlotte Caslick signing with the Terrigal Trojans and Central Coast Division after her commitments with the international tournaments are over. So that was really exciting news. And I think it was just as much fun and excitement was had by myself, and I think you speak for you too, Burner. And it took a fair while for people to realise what day it was when we posted those. And being April Fool's Day, we certainly uncovered a lot of fools. That's for sure. My phone ran hot, and let's just say a lot of people who have their feet ready at the swing to lay the boot in at Terrigal any chance they get. They were swinging like you would not believe, and it was fantastic. So, Central Coast Initiative, I thought it was absolutely great. We jumped on board to have a bit of fun with it as well. And disappointingly, for those of you who are listening, expecting to hear Charlotte on this week's podcast, it's not going to happen because there's a thing called April Fool's Day where you make shit up and you're the fool if you believe it. And let's be honest, Bernard, if anyone's believing the stuff that comes out of our mouths on this broadcast, you're knuckleheads anyway. But no, so Charlie won't be joining us.
You were convincing, mate. You were very, very convincing. But appreciate everybody jumping on anyway. And it looks like you're stuck with us for the next half an hour. So no Charlotte Caslick in the Central Coast Rugby competition. You are a fool if you believe that at all. Well, moving on from Charlotte, mate, and thank you everybody for joining us. Please stick around the episode. Charlotte may appear later on.
Don't look at She might be on later.
Mate, trials ended this weekend.
Yep.
Obviously Easter next weekend, and the competition starts after that. So we did have the end of the men's trials and the first round of the women's, which we'll get into with our Erina Podiatry results around. We had a triple threat match, as it is WrestleMania season, mate. So a triple threat match between Terrigal, Wee Wee, and the Bay on Friday night, and then we also had Razorbacks and Avoca on Saturday, and then end of the trials, and then that leads us into the results around the first one for the year for the women's competition, who had a gala day format. We're just going to get Gus. We're going to bring Gus into the studio here. You can see that if you're on YouTube there.
Hey Gus, how are you, mate? Welcome.
Gus having some issues. I think he's having some issues with his mic there, mate. Gus will join us each week. Obviously needs to work on the mic there a little bit. That's fine. We'll run through the results for him. So women's competition, there were 3 games scheduled. Razorbacks beat Woi Woi first of all, 28-0. Barthy, can you tell us about this scoreline?
Yeah, convincing win by the Razorback women. Ever since they dropped the bong, they've gone really well, standing on their own 2 feet now as Razorbacks. Look, unfortunately, it was at the expense of the Wowo women, who forfeited the match, but we've been assured that the Wowo will be competing this season. It was just a little bit too early in the season for them to start being round 1. So we all know that Wowo like to hit the season and come strong. Generally rounds 2, 3, 4, or 5. So
I'd say round 8. 5's generous.
We'll see how we go. So 28-0 forfeit victory to the Razorbacks, which let's be fair dinkum for 2 seconds. Extremely disappointing for the Razorback women not to get a hit out, but also extremely disappointing for the Wowo women and the Wowo club, who couldn't field a side round 1. I just hope for everyone's sake that the call was made respectfully and early, and it wasn't done at the day when everyone's warmed up and ready to go. So 28-0 victory to the Razorback women to start round 1.
Second game, Avoca beat Hornsby 25 points to 14. So nice tight game, this one.
Yeah, the great thing about this game, we're round 1. We've already had a duple, which is a good
exciting. It's a sign of good things to come, mate.
It is. We like getting a double, and we think there's been a duple. Carly Morris definitely scored one. We think she may have scored 2 tries for the Hornsby women. Score being 14-25, but the Avoca Beach women running in 5 tries. We've spoken about it before at long lengths. The Achilles heel of the Avoca Beach women's side, and we're going to say it right now, they couldn't kick the skin off a custard that side. They dead set have not kicked 1 conversion, and whilst it didn't come out and cost them they premiers, current premierships, didn't cost them the season last year, of great concern. 5 tries to 0. They don't even need to kick. Word on the street is around town, they're not even going to bother. They're going to play the entire season without kicking conversions. That's how confident they are.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's what happened yesterday. They didn't need to kick conversions. They're not opting. They just want more time to score tries, which is fair. You want to go up in 5s rather than go up in 2s.
Summer Witt scored a double. It's easy to count up to counting up in 5s. Summer Witt scored a double. Evie Smith got over the line. Well done to Evie. And Grace Davin and Shani Waters scoring the 5 tries for the Avoca Beach side. So last year's premiers, obviously, and clearly had the toughest game to start the round against a competitive Woolworths side. 25 points to 14. Hornsby, sorry.
Hornsby, mate.
Sorry, 25 points to 14.
Yeah, it was the Lions. That's what I see where you're getting at there. Terrigal beat Lakes 50-0. Strong start.
Yeah, it is very strong start. A lot of tries and some conversions too, which is pleasing to see. Sean George scored a couple.
Duple.
Harley Siach Scott. She scored a couple as well. New to
Are we talking duples here? Like couple, you mean duple?
Side. We do need a duple. And I just want to give a shout out. Anne Jones scored a try and kicked a few goals too. I want to give a shout out to friend of the show and super mum, Prue Bright. She was kicked a few conversions as well. Prue had some alternate duties last year. Giving birth to humans was one of those duties and was unable to play. One of the great women of the competition and a great human being. So good to see Prue back playing rugby. And so, yeah, it's 50 points to 0. A good old-fashioned thrashing at the hands of the Terrigal Trojans over the Lakes. So the Trojan women starting off strong again. So a great day. 7s to get started for the women.
Yeah.
Results of the rounds. Thanks, Gus. Try and get those audio issues fixed for next week, shall we?
Yeah, I think we might have to. We might get rid of Gus there. Yeah, it's probably seems a little bit better. So the tables so far for the women, we have Terrigal on top. We have Avoca in 2nd place. We have Razorbacks in 3rd. We have Warnervale who had the bye. They were sitting in 4th place. And then underneath that, we have Hornsby, Woy, and then Lakes. So that's the table for round 1 for the women's. Obviously, men's will kick off in 2 weeks' time. Do you want to go on to the news segment, mate?
Yep. Can I just point out one thing?
You can.
I think it's a bold but extremely smart and intelligent move by the Woolwee women's side to forfeit. They didn't even show up, and they're not bottom of the ladder. That's a bold play.
Not just good looks down there, mate. Also a bit of brains. All right, Barthy. The new segment, obviously, we are at the mercy of our sponsors. So we've got a new segment this week. Exactly. Tell us about it.
Well, it's going to be a weekly episode. We all know that Gus and the team from Erina Podiatry sponsor our results of the round. And it's great to have Carl on, who's Exquisite Exterior Cleaning. Carl's and his business have come on this year, and they are going to be sponsoring the cleanup of the week. So this cleanup of the week will be presented by Exquisite Exterior Cleaning, and we will issue that cleanup of the week to any team we see fit, whether it be juniors, seniors, women's, whoever the case may be. So this week's Exquisite Exterior Cleanup of the week, you'd think it'd go to the Terrigal Trojans for cleaning up the Lakes, 50 points to 0. Not going to give it to the Trojan women. I'm going to give it to the Arimba women, starting out the season, keeping a clean sheet, scoring 4 converted tries, winning their forfeited match, 28 points to 0 over Woolwee. They get our Exquisite exterior cleanup of the week. Well done to the Razorback women.
They do have the cleanest jerseys of everybody in the
They do.
competition who got a win over the weekend. There is no
Correct.
cleaning that was needed for their jerseys. So it's well done, mate. Big thank you to Exquisite Exterior Cleaning, sponsoring a segment this year, which is awesome. Obviously keeps the potty going as well. So we'll have a cleanup each week. So the cleanup this week goes to the Razorback women.
Just before we move on,
not
quite. Just before we move on, that exquisite exterior cleanup of the week, that could be for anything. So it could be for someone cleaning up a meat pie. It could be someone for just hoovering down a couple of schooners, whatever the cleanup is. Get a hold of us here at the podcast, and you might just see that your nomination might get the cleanup of the week. So anything in and around the game of rugby is eligible to win the exquisite exterior cleanup of the week.
All right, on to the Bitumen Bash. So I mentioned, if you follow us on Instagram or Facebook, you would have saw last week, but the whole bash has been absolutely turned on its head because of one man and one man only. And I don't think there's ever been a person in human history, definitely not a cameraman in human history, that has changed society in the way that Nick Friend did last Thursday morning when he decided to join the Bitumen Bash. Before that, we sort of had a top three of Matt Kong, Dave Hall, and Tim Lark, who were sort of fighting for that top spot of the individual honours. And then Nick just joined with 280 Ks. And just so everybody else knows, the top before that was 180, I believe. So Nick obviously been running for a long time, just sort of scoping out the competition of the Bitumen Bash before he decided to actually join it. And he has taken the competition by storm. He's joined and he's on 331. The closest to him is 217. So
we've been going for 3 weeks or thereabouts. Yep. So that's 100 kilometers a week.
It's disgraceful.
Is that how can we check if that's legit? Now, by no means am I questioning the integrity of friend of the show, Nick Friend,
of the Central Coast greatest cameraman. Now, I did go back through and I thought, is Nick doing the right thing? Is he playing by the rules? And it appears that he definitely is. He's just a very fit man and exercises morning and afternoon. And when you have that sort of exercise routine, you're putting in big numbers. That's how you accrue that. He doesn't miss any days, and he just is an absolute workhorse. Exactly. So the exact opposite of what Team B&B is doing. So Barthy, to put it in context, between just him, he has done 8 times the amount of both of us combined. Obviously, we've had some injuries and some other commitments as well, which have sort of prohibited us. But
I had some border relation issues last week.
You did, mate. You did. So
I've never been in handcuffs before. Well, only your pink fluffy ones. They're the only handcuffs I've worn. But
I was about to always bring that one up.
Never been in the cold steel before, but there we go.
Last week was something different. We can clarify that. But mate, the bash. So Nick Friend leads it at the moment, 331.5 kilometers. We've got Dave Hall second in 217, which is still a massive shift. 217 kilometers.
Oh, you reckon, Dave? Hey, Dave, can you just get a hold of us here in the podcast? Do you reckon he runs with the whistle?
I think he does. I think that's how it exhales through the whistle.
Yeah.
I think it's a technique they actually teach at refereeing school. You got to learn to exhale and inhale with the whistle, and also controlling how loud the whistle is at that circular breathing is what you're trained to do. And I think
played under a few referees like that.
Matt Kong also on 217.
Not saying Dave's one of those because I never played under Dave.
It sounds like you are.
No, I never played under Dave.
And all the way down the bottom, just so we can kind of get a bit of a grasp of where the table sits, Todd Atkins still firmly planted on 0 kilometers. So well done, Todd.
I coached under Dave though, but no, I'm not insinuating that he blows the whistle too much at all. You know, I love you, Dave.
Yeah, backpedaling massive here, mate. So in terms of the clubs, then Nick Friend plying his trade, getting into his work out of Woi. So he has obviously opted. If he wanted to represent himself as a cameraman, we don't have a cameraman team. If he wanted to do that, he'd be sitting in second as an overall team out of everybody. But he's opted to join Woi. That gives Woi 758 combined kilometres. Terrigal in second on 486. So still nearly 300 off the lead there. So Terrigal, if they want that 500, they've got to pull their finger out, get a couple more to join. Refs on 227. Dave, 217 of those. Razorbacks on 147. Avoca on 134. B&B looking very strong on the way up on 37.9. Lakes 31. Hornsby 23. So we're very hard to beat at this stage. Nick Friend, very hard to beat at this stage. Completely changed the competition. But I don't believe there's any photo of Pooch just yet. So the only hope anybody else could have is keeping dogs away from the vicinity of Nick Friend on his walks for the next 10 or so days.
That's thanks to Sarah Lou Fay, the best dog trainer in Australia, putting up $250 for the individual. So got to have your pooch, though. Got to have your pooch. Took my dog for a walk the other day, but I've got to take a photo. So guess that rules me ineligible.
It does, mate. It does. All right, that's the Bitumen Bash. We'll post all this on the stories as well. Right, well, Barthy, last thing before we get before we finish off the episode, and we were going to touch on it last week, but it's the whole Suoliti signing for Australian rugby and what you make of it, because it is pretty big news. And we have spoken about the Wallabies earlier in the year and what they need to do, and the signing of Eddie Jones and those sorts of things with reviving Australian rugby, because it is in a pretty dark spot at the moment. What's your take on the whole thing with signing him? Obviously, the money is quite huge. A lot of people saying that, should have gone to grassroots rugby, and obviously it's a really big talking point. So, what's your take on the whole scenario?
Oh, look, mate, I don't. It doesn't sit easy with me, to be honest. But I don't feel strongly or passionately about it either way, because I can see the legitimacy of both sides of the argument and the discussion about, well, there's been more conversation about rugby in the last week or two than there has in 2 or 3 years prior to that, which is absolutely true. I think there's opportunities. Well, actually, one thing I will say is I'm surprised by the amount of acknowledgement of the fact that he was a rugby player beforehand. I had a conversation with a mate of mine around it, and I expressed my disappointment that we let so many players go. And he raised the point which I thought was pretty fair and decent. He said, "Well, why wouldn't you just let them go? Let rugby league pour money into them, get them to develop professionalism and develop a lot of their skills, and then once they've got that to an acceptable level, then you get them back to rugby." And I thought, geez, that's not a bad idea. That's not a bad sort of, I guess, stance or philosophy, if you will. But you got to get them back for starters. And then it came to light, and I saw a fair bit of merit in that discussion. And then it came to light that Suoliti asked Australian Rugby Union for a $200,000 contract about 3 years ago, and they said no.
Yeah.
So he came to play rugby league. It was something along those lines. Came to play rugby league, played 3 years of rugby league, and Australian Rugby Union now paying reportedly 1.6 or whatever it is. So there's clearly absolute management issues. It could be a stroke of genius in regards to marketing, and that's where I just sit back and go, you know what? Either way, I think rugby's problems are far greater than spending $1.6 million on one player.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot more issues to play with the governance of the game than just the signing of one player.
Yeah, well, I'm with you. And the first time you kind of hear about it, like, okay, 1.6 is obviously a lot to pay a player, but I do think it is a stroke of genius, because if you look at just say New South Wales, I know Melbourne's a little bit different, and Queensland's kind of the same as New South Wales, and that's not. Its league is the main thing, the main competition, whereas Melbourne, Victoria, got AFL. But no one, rugby league has such a big stronghold on our state, and I think the whole conversation of you should have poured into grassroots rugby, that's what we should have been doing for a long time beforehand. But I think you need something at the top now. It's not just grassroots, because there's nothing to aspire to up the top. And I've said this many times before, but there's no household names now. There's people that are my age, and that are having kids, the next generation that's sort of coming through, their parents are watching league over union. So the kids are raised in households, regardless of what the parents want to do. The kids are seeing league stars more, and league is so much more accessible to those kids that are growing up that it doesn't matter what your juniors and your pathways are. The desire is to go to league over union because it's more attractive. Whereas rugby, it's not popular, so that has a huge impact. So you've got to get people talking about it. In terms of 1.6 million, I think it's genius in even just the marketing value that rugby league is going to give to rugby union over the next year, with how many times that they've, in interviews, a reporter asks a question at a rugby league conference and it pumps up rugby union. Like you see all the time, it's happened so many times where it's like on, NRL 360 or whatever, they start to talk about rugby union and they're talking about, that's free publicity. Well, not free, they're paying $1.6 million for it. But it's all good publicity at the moment because that's what the ARU needs. They need somebody to talk about them because nobody is talking about them at the moment. And you can do what you want at grassroots level. And again, that does need to improve massively. There's got to be somebody at the top. He's obviously a good buy as a talent on the field. Whether he's worth 1.6, maybe not. But in terms of marketing value, I think it's genius. And when he went to league, he's so big because there was that tug of war between the Roosters and Souths, to get his signature and everything. If he just stayed in Union, do you reckon he'd be as big as he is in terms of this teen prodigy and everything? Like he's gone and he's played fullback for Samoa at a World Cup. He's done all these things, whereas he'd probably be the same as like a Jordan Petaia for the Reds in terms of this prodigy sort of coming through and playing for the Wallabies. But like Petaia's still a freak, but he doesn't have this market value that Suaalii has. And I think they're probably pretty similar sort of players. Like they've got that prodigy kind of about him. But Eddie Jones was saying that last time he was obviously coaching it around, they had to bring in your league players like your Wendell Sallies, your Takiris, your Matt Rogers, who had this experience at an elite level, handling the pressure of massive crowds and grand final, state of origin, all that sort of stuff. But if you're developing players through grassroots and they're sort of playing Super Rugby in front of 15,000 people, by the time you get to Wembley in a packed stadium, then in a World Cup, the pressure is so much different, whereas Rugby League provides that environment a bit more. And Suaalii will come into a Wallaby setup with that, obviously a different game, but he's played it many times before, but he's a bit more steeled from playing a Rugby League World Cup grand final. He's playing in front of 50,000 when he plays the Souths Roosters match. So he's got that big game experience, regardless of if it's in a different code, and he brings that across. So I think that's a good thing as well. But the biggest thing is that it's a talking point for rugby union. That's exactly what they need because they just don't have one at the moment. So you've got to, they've dug himself into the point. They've got to do something to get him out of it. And I think it's a really good buy because Suaalii was built as the up and coming kid and the one to take over, Tedesco and everything and be the big star in NRL. And rugby union's taken it off league for 4 years. And props to Suaalii. He probably will go back when he's 25 and he's already experienced a Lions tour and a World Cup and everything and played overseas and enjoyed everything that rugby union has to offer. And then he goes back over to league and do what he wants from there. So I think it's win-win for I think it's win-win for rugby and for Suaalii, actually, to be honest. But like you said, you just got to see how it pans out. Like he's one injury away from.
And you think of someone like Phil Kearns, what a great advocate for the game of rugby. Played 11 years at the elite level and never played a British and Irish Lions games. Didn't play one game. Played 11 years for Australia. He played in between the Lions tours, captained his country, all that sort of stuff. And here we are, it could be a sign of professionalism nowadays. Here we are using it as a marketing tool to get someone to sign. But I think you yourself just highlighted what the issues are with the ARU and grassroots and the lack of progression that the sports have, that the sport has at the elite level. But we're not going to bore our listeners with our mundane thoughts on that. But I did see, I think it was in the Herald today, 1 in 6 NRL players have a rugby background. Through sort of schooling and that sort of issue as well. So in many ways, rugby is doing the work for league, and we're just got to pay for it at the big end of it because they see easy money to start with. Well, they don't see that in rugby, I guess. But anyway, look, we'll see how it all pans out, eh?
Exactly. We'll see how it continues. I look forward to sort of hearing more about it in the media. And just keep in mind when you're listening to it, listeners, that it is free. Obviously, you're paying for it in the meantime, but you will hear it so much over the next year as well, which is good for rugby union. Hopefully, it's going to inspire a couple others to come across, or some other big movements towards rugby union, which is what we want, what we need, because we need the game to obviously be in the spotlight. I think that's the episode, mate.
That it. We're going to finish
Anything
on a dull topic like
I know.
the state of the governance of the game. It's pretty disappointing, isn't it?
It is very disappointing, actually. Well, what we can do is we can pump everybody up, because we get Easter Bunny comes, and then the week after that, the competition starts for the men's, which is incredibly exciting. So next week's episode, I'll go.
What was your favourite Easter egg? What was your favourite Easter egg?
What do you mean was? Do you want to continue? Because I'm happy to still go the Cadbury cream egg, because that's still
say, other than all of them. Which one did you particularly like the most?
Cadbury cream egg's always been the favourite, mate. Don't mind the caramel one these days. Okay. Tell you, it was a bit of a guilty pleasure, mate. I don't know if we're getting better with. Is this
an after dark? A guilty pleasure? Is this for after dark or?
Well, it could be. It felt that way. You get a caramel egg. I was doing this during Easter when we had COVID. You get a caramel egg and you drop it into your coffee. Man, it's good. It's good stuff. Yeah, it's good. This is also at a time when I was eating Nutella on muffins for breakfast and stuff. Like, when it's peak COVID, you're doing whatever you want for sort of comfort food. Is it those sorts of times?
Just to give our listeners one last sort of visual, what do you reckon you balloon to during COVID when you're having Nutella breakfast followed by cream egg coffees?
My biggest was I sort of sat around the 103. It wasn't the weight. It was just that the lack of, it was the fat to muscle ratio, I think was the problem. The scales kind of always stay the same. It's just what the physique sort of looks like, man. That's the issue.
Get us out of here.
Let's do it. Competition starts. One more episode, or next episode is actually the season preview. So hopefully next week the ending will be a bit stronger and we lead into actually some games.
Thank you to all those who did express their disappointment not having an episode last week, but such is life, and you've got one now. So.
And we apologise, Charlotte's not on the episode if you've gotten to this far in.
Oh, hang on. My phone is going. We've got her coming on now.